Welcome to Well Played Podcast, a show on all things playful and joyous in education. I'm your host, Michael Matera, 6th grade teacher, author, and speaker. Well Played is part of the On Podcast Media Network, so definitely check out those podcasts. Today's episode is about using video games to connect and collaborate in your classroom. And I'm really excited to have Becky with us here. So Becky, if you could give a brief introduction, to the Well Played community here, we're super excited to have you.
Okay. I am currently I'm not teaching because Florida's a little bit scary right now. But my kids need a lot of support at home, and my husband runs an IT department, so I just decided this is the best thing. But I've taught STEAM for K-8, and I've also taught 5th grade at a science magnet school, and I have always been a lover of video games and play.
Yeah, so this is where I'm kind of really excited to do this episode with you because Becky and I have sort of seen each other's work online. We've been in similar communities. We even played a board game together over the internet. What platform was that on? I can't remember. We played Railroad Inc. together on one of those board game recreated board games.
It was a while ago. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, I can't remember. There's several of these. But nonetheless, really excited to chat about video games because I think anybody that knows my work knows that I'm super into board and card games, and I do like video games. And my favorite aspect of board and card games is this coming together around a table, right? It is the sort of laughter in the room. It is the ribbing you can do of each other, like, I got you here, or I took this thing, or, oh no, you got me before I could get you. And so I will say for me, video games, probably my favorite style of video games is like a party video game. I think they're called couch co-ops, where like you are in the room, you are seated together, and you are doing these quick things, right? Where you can kind of say like, let's load it up again, let's try it again. And I love that about video games. But obviously there's a large runway on video games. You can get into long format single player games, you can get into RPGs, you can get into like Minecraft, and I mean, like, there's just endless. I mean, there is a video game for every type of player, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. And and more games today are designed to fit more types of players too, so you can play certain ones in different ways.
That is super true. So one I guess story that I wanted to lead off with is in my classroom. Here we are in this global pandemic, and in my classroom I teach in a hybrid model. So I have in-person kids, I got some online kids, and for my in-person kids, I'm feeling like there isn't that sort of magic that a school has, where like recess they get to go run around and play, lunch they get to chat, right? Like that little conversations in the hall, those little conversations at their tables, that kind of, so much of that got taken away when we monitor the halls really well so that we can have socially distance. When they're in our classrooms, they're 6 feet away. I hate to say it, but there's just a little bit of that luster has been tarnished and taken off on a school experience. And so I was looking for a way to sort of bring back a little bit of that magic that could still fit the social distancing and all that other stuff. And I decided 2 weeks ago to start bringing in my Nintendo Switch that I have. And all the Switches have wireless controllers, so kids can kind of stay in their seats. I have a big projector / TV, and so hooked it up to that, and it's been so fun playing these couch co-op games because you hear kids, like, you hear that excitement erupt, right? Mm-hmm. It's so fun to hear kids sort of bubble over with that excitement and that line of like, let's load it up and play again. So do you have a game you've played or that you like that might fit that example?
Well, there's a lot of games that you can use, and they're being used for esports right now. Mm-hmm. Like that you can just jump in real quick and play. Obviously a huge one that I would suggest is Minecraft, because kids they have esports levels now, but there are also standards aligned lessons that teachers can use for any subject. I mean, you go to their website and you can check out what's there, but there's also, a library of things that they can go through. But other games where, there's less, I guess, freedom to build and wander around like that and explore would be something that just puts you right into, you know, puts you right into the game. Like a really great co-op game is Killer Queen Black. And
Don't know
Rocket
that one.
League is really popular. Splatoon is a great one, but you have to have your own copy for each device. So then you're getting into more devices. But um, we were talking, and you mentioned snipper clips. That's a really great one for spatial visualization and collaboration, getting those kids to talk about how to move those pieces around.
All right, so
I can I can imagine the success of that one. I could just see it in my head. It sounds like a
yeah,
blast.
so like for those of you that are catching this podcast, I mean, you should see Becky's face light up when she's thinking about snipper clips. So walk some of our listeners through what that game is, just in general form.
Well, it's like a puzzle game.
Yep.
It's sort of like puzzle pieces, and you have to and each character has their own shape, and you have to put them together and snip off of each other's pieces, which can be really hilarious.
Yeah.
um, but you snip off parts of each other's pieces and make the shape and then fit into it correctly. Sometimes you have to solve a puzzle and bounce a ball into a hoop, little things like that. But it has all these neat challenges that you have to figure out and verbalize, together. How are we going to make this happen? And it's like this crazy, loud cacophony of fun. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I am entirely with you. So Snipper Clips is a great example of a short thing that the players that are playing are having a good time. The ones that are actually watching, at least in my classroom, can kind of shout out like, "Oh, no, 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 you got to do this, you got to do that," right? Like, so there's tons of backseat driving going on
Yes.
in a room full of kids that
Well said.
want to play Snipper Clips, and it is this interesting thing where like you're both, for lack of a better words, you're both like sheets of paper, if you will, and the only way to cut each other is to sort of overlap paper.
Yes.
And then you kind of see what that overlap would be, and if you hit the button, it would snip that off. And so like Becky's saying, you got these challenges of putting a ball a certain way, and well, if the ball's going to drop here, we need like you to be like a ramp so that it slides this way, so I'm going to trim you that way, but then you got to trim me like, then the ramp's got to go up to go into the hoop.
No, but then you got to be like a J shape.
Yeah.
No, more curvy.
Yeah, and like you're shaving off these things, you're trying, and you're like, we shaved off too much, or like, oh my gosh, you pushed the button by accident, cut me in half. Like,
Yeah, that game is a blast. It's fantastic.
yeah, and here is that emotional moment that I want to try to bring back, and so that's a really good one. One that I wanted to highlight on here too, that I really really like is, it's called. I'm blanking now on the name. one of my all-time favorites here is Towerfall. Towerfall it looks almost like an original Nintendo game, very like blocky pixelated art.
Retro.
Yeah, retro, right? So it's like, but yet it was made only like a few years ago. Really quick. It can play up to I think 6 people. And here's another thing that's nice about the Switch is each controller can be used like separately as its own controller. And a lot of these couch co-op games, you only need like a few buttons. You need a joystick to move your person, and then usually there's like a jump and like a do action button. So it's like two things. And Towerfall, you're all these little characters where above your head is 2 or 3 symbols of arrows, and that's how many arrows you have. And it is just last person standing, and it's just a quick, it takes 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50 seconds to play around, because you either can, in this pixelated blocky art, like hit somebody with an arrow, or you can do kind of the Mario jump on their head. And so like people are jumping around all these like various levels of little pedestals to stand on. There's all sorts of little cool bonuses. You can get little wings that let you fly, like different types of arrows that can shoot through walls, these kind of things. But ultimately it is an action-packed 30, 40 seconds where again, the rest of the room likes to see it. They're laughing. It produces those epic moments that people are like, oh my gosh, did you see that? He was falling, shot the arrow while falling, hit somebody. Like, oh my goodness. And again, if that sounds, as I say it, if it sounds like violent to you, I will tell you that like that pixelated art again kind of doesn't make it kind of crazy. It's just this competitive kind of king of the hill kind of moment.
Hmm. Yeah, I think another really great game that kind of reminds me of that fun that you're talking about is Scribble Knots. I don't know, there's like a couple different versions of it. And it's a game where you type in a word and it gives you the object that you asked for. And that is like if you say you're trying to get up to the top of a tower to get a star or something. That's what you have to attain. You have to come up with a way to get it. So you could get a ladder. You could maybe say trampoline and then jump and bounce your way up
Oh,
there. And
nice.
so it's really cool because like it's very open-ended. I mean, it's limited in what you can pull up, but it has a lot of objects that will automatically come up. And so you could have kids work together. I particularly love using video games where kids can be social but also do problem solving, and that I think is a really great one that is easy to jump in real quick, and the levels are nice and short, so I think it could fit into that time span too.
Yeah, and like we said at the beginning of the show, there you obviously can develop awesome units and lessons around large format video games that are going to take tons of time. So I don't want to say
Hmm.
that like they have to be short, but
Hmm.
an area that I didn't really think about until this year because we could easily collaborate. I could easily sit at a table and play a board game or a card game with them. I haven't really thought about how like short use couch co-op type video games could be a great thing to do while you're waiting for class to start, or
Hmm.
in my case, I have to open my classroom up at about 7:45. Class doesn't start or school doesn't start till 8:10, but some of your kids get dropped off and they're sitting there and like, oh man, here's a great little thing that you could do to sort of bond with those kids that get dropped off early. Um, Same thing on the other end. This year, kids have to wait in our classrooms until they get picked up, and so you have this like nebulous time with them, and formalizing that nebulous time into sort of a fun activity in which it's a little bit their space. Like even if they've
Hmm.
never played Towerfall, my kids have never heard of it, having me bring that up then and kind of there's a little bit of credibility like, whoa, this dude like knows some video games. Hey, this video game's really fun. And now like some like one kid's like, I told my mom not to pick me up for a little bit because I wanted, and I'm like, ooh, that's not what we want. We don't want that.
Yeah, I think if you get kids interested just by touching on something that they love, even if it's not a game that they've tried before, even if you just admit, hey, you know what, I don't really know a lot about video games and I'm just trying something new here, then they let them make suggestions. I mean, that's a huge thing too. Just get them involved, tap into what their knowledge is, because that's what school is all about, to get them excited and interested in what they're doing. And video games don't just have to be, you know, play only where there's no structure. I mean, you can even bend the rules of a game to make it so that it is educational, even if it's not straight up delivering some content that you're trying to, deliver to them or draw out of them and get them to develop into something bigger. I mean, you can have a lot of fun just bending the rules and trying something new.
I love, love, love that message, right? That, just because something's coming off the shelf product like this way doesn't mean you can't apply other sort of rule sets on top of that to make it a unique, interesting challenge for your students, your classroom, or yourself, right? Like when you play a video game by yourself, you can try different challenges that aren't just built in the game. Such a good point there.
You see, that kind of disruptive thinking is happening. The kids are going home and they're watching YouTube videos and Twitch streams of other people who play video games who are coming up with their own rules. And they're doing speed challenges and they're doing completion challenges and they're streaming it and sharing it with others and they're making money off of it. So kids are really excited about that, and some of them want to become streamers when they grow up. But I mean,
Many of
it's
them,
already
many of them
happening.
want to.
And that creativity to think, okay, how can I make this really hard challenge that people are going to be excited to watch for my stream? That's something that I think adults haven't quite caught on to yet. That yeah, you can bend the rules, and it can be really entertaining, and it can be really challenging, and it can have great critical thinking skills involved in it. I mean, It's fun. I love watching that stuff. I love doing that stuff.
Well, and two, I think maybe I'm going to dip here into board games just for a hot second. I apologize. I'm going to show all on video games
I
today.
love board games too. You're like way more well versed at board games than I am, but
But
I'm with you.
uh, my sort of game group that I play with, sometimes we intentionally do that. Like, you're playing a board game and you're like, let's see, like, yes, we know that a very good winning strategy is to buy this building, this thing, and that thing. But I'm going to try to do it intentionally, like the other way. Like,
Hmm.
if I totally
Just
focus,
asking what if, right?
yeah, like, and it's interesting to explore those. And even when you come up short, like, even when I don't win the game that way, it produces such rich conversation because we have this like
Yes.
whole new data about the game, and you're like, wow, I never knew like that was a good combination, this farm plus this thing, which we've never thought of, because no one was ever doing this weird strategy before.
Hmm.
And sometimes it produces better results for the like the gold standard strategy, whatever that is.
Hmm.
You do pull out some nuggets where, like, even in the gold standard strategy, applying this new technique, while that overarching new strategy didn't work, we did get some new techniques in there. So that's that exploratory feel of a game where you're intentionally trying a different path is pretty intoxicating. I don't know. I love it.
Well, if you think about it, like when a game comes out, a video game comes out, and people review it. Like a lot of times, before it comes out, even they start saying, "I wish it had this. I wish it." Like if it's a sequel to something that
Mm-hmm.
they've already played, they'll say, "Oh, I hope this time around they make it so you could do this and this." I mean, they have their list. They know what they want, and sometimes they come up with really creative ideas. And as the game is being developed, you'll hear, oh, the company's delaying the video game a little bit and they're going to be integrating some different mechanics. They're listening to the feedback from people who want to play their games and figuring out how to make better games because the whole community is involved in that process of kind of inventing what the game could be, the best version of it. And so it doesn't just have to be after the game is made. I mean, even before a game is complete, people have a say. They have that agency to decide what the game can be. So,
No, that's neat. And then I think too, some of the video games, educational video games, in some respects, are ed tech companies. I think about the success of Kahoot or Gimkit, and while those are off the shelf pretty awesome, again, like Becky's saying, we that doesn't mean we can't spin it, and I think I've done that with Kahoot. Kahoot is rather basic. I mean, it's a multiple choice activity in which there's like a leaderboard. I mean, that's really what it is. Um, but instead of having everyone have their device, like I've done where you break them up into groups and you put four devices on like the other side of the classroom. And now the question comes up and you make them do like silly challenges. Like, I don't know, maybe they have to hopscotch between their computer and like where they start, the starting line. So now there's this physicality to the game, right? Like
mm-hmm.
Kahoot was never going to build that in because they can't build that in. That's in your classroom. They can't make it into the software. But you could just have four computers and four teams. It doesn't have to be one per person, and make them do these silly hopscotch challenges. Or I've had it where they've had to answer a question to me. There's like a dry erase board where they have to write down the answer, show me, and then they can go to the computer and answer the actual question that's the game. So there's like a little speed bump, right? But you can do those little twists and turns to the game
Mm.
that all of a sudden, one, make it a little more human. Like it's like, oh, this is Mr. Matera's twist. Like no one else in the world is playing Kahoot this way. And there's almost a little like, we're in a secret club. Like it's super fun. And I don't know if this works for every grade level, but my sixth graders really appreciate that. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
this he did this for us. So any moment you can kind of spin a game, there's lots of reasons to do that. It ups the challenge, it ups the difficulty, it ups the like critical thinking skills that go in there, because like now they have to know Kahoot, they have to know your content, and oh wow, whatever speed twist this is.
Mm-hmm.
uh
Yeah. Well, you could do really amazing stuff with gamification too, and I was inspired by that too. Like I did professional development last year, all year long, with the Orlando Science Center for middle school students to integrate modeling and simulation. And we did like just some general STEM challenges. And so one of them was a tower challenge. And that's like a staple in STEM, education, to do something like that. So give them cardboard, I had 3x5 cards and tape, certain amount of tape, and make
Love
them
it.
build a certain, make them build at a certain height by a certain time. And I'm like, okay, how about I get those cute little Botley robots we have out? And, they're supposed to be for little kids. So I did K-8, so I had them sitting around. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to put one on each desk. One remote is going to make them move and knock over the tower after a certain time limit if they don't reach a certain height. And then after that, whatever's left over, they build up to the ultimate height they're going for. So, that was the same feeling, like, oh my gosh, this is our thing. This is our thing. This is
Yep.
our class. And this is crazy. But they were, middle school kids. So they got these cute little robots with big, huge eyes, and they're freaking out because they're like, I'm so scared. But
I
they loved it.
I love that story, and I hope all of us kind of hear the value there is in taking time to do something special for your students, right?
Hmm.
And that taking that off the shelf product can save you a ton of time. So that amount of time you've saved, spend a little bit of it adding your own twist, because then that becomes sort of a home cooked meal for your kids.
Yeah,
And
that's a perfect way to put it.
I love I love that. I love that feel of this is special. This is,
Hmm.
and I will fully admit they don't all work out, but actually that's part of it too. Like maybe your thing, it didn't work out. Maybe it became like too impossible to build the thing after it gets, bumped by the robot. Maybe my Kahoot was too challenging, so they didn't answer as many questions. But like, I don't know, you learn from that, and the kids actually, I think, appreciate. They see you being a lifelong learner right in front of their eyes. If everything
Yes.
comes off perfect and polished, they just feel like, oh, like how much is he actually being a lifelong learner? He's just doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I think being willing to fail in front of your students is a huge lesson for them, that that failure is just part of learning, and you're developing things as you go. You didn't like jump into education knowing everything.
mm-mm.
You actually have to learn as you go. And I think the more risks that you take, especially with integrating games, something that they love, that they're experts about, being, totally fine with being humble and saying, this is not my expertise, but let's try it, or give me your input. How would you do this? Like, I think asking, especially middle school students, for their input, it makes them feel a sense of agency. It makes them feel like they have control over what and how they learn, even if it's just playtime. They feel like this is my place, my community. But yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can make that home cooked meal, that you can have a little diversion thinking. We were chatting a little bit ahead of time about like a game like Into the Breach, which you can set up an Epic Games account for free, and they have a free game every week. And this was recently free. So, my husband played it a ton, and I was playing other games obsessively. So I didn't try it out yet. So I got it, and I started to play it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, get a collaborative whiteboard, have kids work in a team, and in different teams, and come up with strategies on how to play this game and beat a level at the same time. And it's a single player game, but you can turn it into a multiplayer, and you can have them kind of document what their choices were and discuss that together. And so it wouldn't be like a 2-minute thing, but it could be like a whole critical thinking, collaboration, learning to communicate, and trying to figure out how to save the world from these monsters on this like futuristic chessboard, trying to save the city with your mechs. It's pretty cool.
No, and that brings me back to that whole, backseat driver. Like it is actually pretty engaging to sort of look at something and as a class, as a team, sort of say like, I think we should do this. Just the sheer collaboration that takes and the communication skills that takes. That's a use of your time that I think's well put. And then on that note, if you're wondering like, well, I don't know where to build these in, think about some of those times you have in your day. Like I said, my morning time where kids school hasn't begun, my afternoon time where like I'm waiting for kids to get picked up. Or, when school returns to normal and you have like normal recess and that stuff, asking a few kids to stay in and sort of play this game and sort of bond with you is a big one. And then in the example like Becky has with like the whole class working on maybe a single player game together, you could possibly build that into a unit if communication and collaboration is the focus of the unit. Or this could be like the fun thing you do if it's turn based. Well, then you could easily put that at the last few minutes of every classroom, every class, and we sort of slowly see how we do over 2 weeks. That could be like a little hook. It could be the first thing you do in the class. Like that could be your bell ringer. Get there early, get in your seat, so then you have a voice for our next move. There's ways you can drop these things in where it's not huge, invasive, I don't know, pieces on your time.
Like even if you get into coding with students, just to as a warm up, you could do Human Resource Machine, which is a game where you're pretty much just doing assembly language, and you've got this board, and you have to pick up an input, and then you have to use the floor to set things down and manipulate things, and then put the right output on the conveyor belt at the end. And I've had students use something like that, and they're like, I don't know anything about coding. I'm like, no, let's just, what would you do? What's the right order of things? And it gets that computational thinking going, and it really helps to warm them up for whatever's next. If they're going to do math, this just did multiplication, So you've just gotten them warmed up with that kind of thinking, and they're ready to go. I mean, something like a game called Baba Is You is a really neat one. It's disruptive thinking where you've got this cute little, it looks like a bunny hopping around on the board, and you can change what certain things are, so you slide things around physically, and it says, Baba is wall, and then Baba is the wall. So the whole walls move around on the board. So you change the rules pretty much.
That's
it's
awesome.
almost like playing Flux.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like where the rules are just changing and you're defining them as you play. And it's a really neat way to just loosen up, your mind and I think when you get into the classroom, sometimes everything is so rigid, and it's, everyone's looking for the same responses on your questions, on your worksheets and stuff, and you've got to allow that divergent thinking to come out, and, the disruptive thinking where you say, well, wait a second, what if I did it a different way than I was taught? What would happen? It's like all about that what if.
I love it. So on that, it is reflection time here. We're already at the end of the show here. This quote comes from Shigeru Miyamoro. Sorry, I mispronounced that. He's the sort of big founder of Nintendo. So I thought this would be a good person to sort of pull a quote from. You ready for it?
Sure.
All right, here it goes. Video games are bad for you. That's what they said about rock and roll. How does that fit our topic today?
Well, I can give you a specific example. I spent my summer planning to teach Minecraft, teach through Minecraft, because I knew it was a way to connect the kids at home and the ones at school. And I knew it could be really well structured, or it could just be for play. I knew we couldn't do play the same ways because of all the social distancing restrictions and certain students, needing to be at home. So with that, I got resistance from teachers who said, well, parents aren't going to want their kids playing that. They don't like them playing those kinds of games. They've not really seen what you can do in Education Edition. It is incredible. They haven't seen the creations kids have made and posted online. Mm-hmm. They've got kids who are even creating lessons and posting them to the Minecraft community in Education Edition. So, that kind of resistance of, well, kids shouldn't be playing those kinds of games. And then some of them even saying kids can't play games all day long, but then they have them using this ed tech all day, telling me when I was a substitute for a while there, just getting out of being a stay-at-home mom for a while, they said, use those iPads, let them play these ed tech games. That's your best friend. Video games are not bad. Those are video games. Mm-hmm. They're just designed to teach specific content. So, we need to embrace that video games are actually really good for us. They motivate us. Video games taught me how to push myself and make myself my greatest challenger.
Well, I like
And
that.
because of that, I bend those rules and I make them harder on every game I play. I make it harder because I want to be my best. And it's not about me versus somebody else. It's about me being the best player that I can be, because that is really rewarding for me and enriching. But
I like that.
we need to change that mindset.
No, that's really good. For me, I think that the quote really, encourages us to realize, each generation sometimes holds on to like their generational experience maybe a
True.
little too long, right? Like we want to turn kids into we want to have kids like kind of our experience, and you got to be open to other people's hobbies, other people's like interests, and
Hmm.
same with generations. Like our generation needs to somewhat give way to their interest, their hobby, and maybe we could help translate how that their experience and our experience come together. And I think video games do a really good job of that if we're open to it. But if you just shut down like the rock and roll kind of comment, like, oh, it's all
Hmm.
just crazy noise, you're not seeing the beauty that's there.
Exactly.
And there's a tremendous amount of beauty there.
I
Well,
know a number of brain scientists that say they're not just beautiful, but they're actually good for your brain too. So,
100%. Well, Becky, thank you so much for coming on. Well played today. It's been excellent having you here.
well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
Everyone else, thank you so much for making Well Played a regular stop on your sort of podcast listening. I really appreciate that. As always, you can check out all the happenings that I have going on at mrmatera.com. I hope you check out my YouTube channel, and we got some live streams happening there. So, as always, I hope you have a great day and that you play on.